Grab the duct tape and mentally prepare yourself for yet another mind-expanding knowledge bomb from America's #1 business coach, Clay Clark.
That's it. Bombs away.
Yes, 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 and yes. Matt Kline, welcome back onto the Thrive Time Show. How are things in Denver?
They're great. We didn't get snow. Looks like a normal kind of gloomy day, but everything's good.
Boom.
We got to the end of the year, almost.
Well, hey, you have made it successfully through the year. You've been helping award franchises to great franchisees all throughout this country. You guys are celebrating 13 years in business. There's over 400 OXI Fresh territories that are now out there. And how many locations do you currently own there, Mr. Matt Kline?
I personally own 2 in northern Colorado.
So you own 2 OXI Fresh franchises. How many technicians work for you at this point, or work with you?
So at the end of the year now, I have 2 full-time guys, and I have a floater, which that person will turn into a full-time employee come springtime, and then we'll work on our 4th employee near July-ish. That's kind of what we look at.
So I find a lot of people that have a small business, which I believe is what you would classify what you're doing there is a small business. A lot of people have a small business, and they can't seem to keep their team together. They can't seem to keep the team from infighting. They can't seem to get the team to show up on time, and no team is perfect. But talk to me about the essential quality of having a daily huddle with your technicians or a daily call with your team in order to keep the team headed the right way.
Yeah, it's super important for me specifically. So I have a daily phone huddle, and then my dad, who's now retired, is helping me. He does a weekly in-person huddle with them just because I'm a little bit extended from my territory. Prior to that, I was doing those weeklies myself. I do a once a month. My dad does once a week, and I do daily on the phone. And it's vitally important for multiple reasons. One, in our industry, we have employees that have a vehicle. They have equipment. They have their days. They have their work orders. They sometimes will have checks that they need to turn in. So what we're doing is multiple things. One, we're basically making sure all the things that they need to turn in for me to be able to close out work orders is to me quickly, right? So that we can close out those and we can get on. But more importantly than that, what we're doing is we're starting to really build a relationship with these employees to figure out what they're really strong at, what they're really weak at, what we need to work on in terms of just them being able to be more efficient with their day, better at their job, better customer service. But we're also filling the gaps. If you don't have a conversation with your employees consistently, right, what I see happen in my industry is we'll see that they'll start operating with equipment that's not up to par. Or they'll start cutting corners because they feel like their time is not, they don't have enough time. You know, you're not going to realize what their inadequacies are, whether it's getting to a job on time or whether it's not asking for those reviews at the end of the job. So what we're doing is we're checklist item every single thing that they need to do on a daily basis, and we're actually holding them accountable. We're not having one conversation every month to say, this is what you're not good at, right? It's consistent. If you tell somebody consistently, this is what you're doing wrong, this is what you're doing wrong, this is going to change your paycheck by how you actually operate your day, and here's how you do it better, then you can start working on them and developing their skills so they can become a much, much better employee, and the environment in your business will become better because everyone's going in the right direction.
I have found that there was a book written by Napoleon Hill back in the day called Outwitting the Devil, and he talked about how there's 2 different kinds of people out there. And he talked about how the person who is intentional with how they live their life and who resets their day every day, they wake up every day and they say, what did I do well yesterday and what could I do better? That person is very rare, and he would call that person a person who's intentional. But by default, he described that the vast majority of the American population, or any population, drifts. And he describes that as he says, a drifter is one who permits himself to be influenced and controlled by the circumstances outside of his own mind. He would rather let me occupy his mind and do his thinking than go to the trouble of thinking for himself. A drifter is one who accepts whatever life throws in his way without making a protest or putting up a fight for what is right. He doesn't know what he wants from life and spends all his time getting just that. A drifter has a lot of opinions, but they are not his own. A drifter is one who is too lazy mentally to use his own brain. And that is and he goes on to explain how there's certain people that just, whatever life throws at them, they just let it happen. So it's like if the equipment quits working, they just quit using that part of the equipment. If they run out of checklists, they don't tell you, and they just quit using a checklist. If the phone, the business phone quits working, they just don't tell you. If they get a scratch in the car, they just won't maintain it. If they need to change the oil in the car, they just won't do it. If the lawn is growing too much, they just won't mow it. If they need to brush their teeth, they just won't brush them. They just drift. And Matt, I think the drifting is a huge problem in local service businesses. What are the areas that would drift immediately if you stopped the daily huddles, even just for 2 weeks?
Yeah, so there's a few of them, obviously, but just them being able to manage their schedule, I find that drifts, right? If you're not constantly checking in on them, then it's okay to show up to the first job 20 minutes late, right? Because they may have the customer service skills to get over that little hurdle of being late, right? Just by being sweet to the customer. Or what'll happen for me that drives me absolutely nuts is they just will slack on their work order. The easiest part of their job, okay? So they got to the job, they did all the things necessary, they did the job correctly, but they won't fill out their work order so that I can't close it out.
So you can't get,
right?
you can't get paid. You can't get paid, you're saying?
Right, they don't get paid. So if I can't close it out, I don't know. I can't award them an upsell if they had an upsell on the job. I can't actually let them, it just creates more work for me because then I got to go into the credit card processing company. I got to figure out what happened. So you just have to set the standard. If I don't get it, you don't get paid, right? And they'll start to slack. It'll be 2 this month that they didn't close out right. Next month, it'll be 5. The month after, it'll be 10, right? And so what they're doing is creating havoc in your business by not really paying attention to the detail. And they're not because you're not holding them accountable to it, right?
So
there's no penalty for them.
So you have a daily huddle, but you also have to have carrots and sticks. Talk to me about the carrots and sticks. What would happen if you got rid of the penalty if they, so just say you said, guys, here's the deal. If you don't close out the invoices, I really wish you would, but if you don't, it's just not going to be good. And you didn't actually do something about it. I mean, what if there was no penalty for them not closing out the orders properly? What would happen?
Yeah, anytime there's any sort of deviation from a normal job, or maybe they're a little bit behind, or maybe they have a difficult customer, they're just going to not do it, plain and simple, because they know it doesn't actually matter. It may be frustrating at the time they have to confess to it, but there's no real penalty. They're going to just go on and do it. They're going to be less efficient every single day. Everything will slip. If they're slipping on their work orders, they're going to slip on them getting out of bed. If they slip out of getting out of bed, they're going to slip on actually doing all the details of getting a Google review. If they slip on that, they're going to slip on their product mixtures. Every single piece of the job, if one slips, it has the potential to slip on everything. So you have to basically stay on them with everything because their job is to do the job efficiently, right? Your job is to hold them accountable to that job so they can get better. If your employees are getting worse as the more and more they're working with you as an owner of a company, you're not doing your job. You need to make sure you're building their skills so they're getting better day to day. They're developing things that can take them to a better job down the road potentially.
Andrew, I want to get your take here on this because you work with a lot of service providers. And why do service providers shy away from ever by default, ever? I mean, it's like they never, ever put a stick in place, and they never do daily huddles. I mean, why do you feel like that is? And am I exaggerating? Yeah. I mean, are all the service providers doing daily huddles? Are they all doing carrots and sticks? How do you see it?
Yeah, so most service providers that I see when I first started working with them, they don't have any carrots or sticks or weekly meetings or any sort of consequence or punishment. The biggest thing I see is that they are being held hostage by their employees, so they don't have another option. They're too afraid that, hey, if I do hold them accountable, something bad's going to happen, they're going to leave, and then I'm going to have to do all of the work, and I can't do that. They have this massive fear. So you have to set up a process or a system in place to get new employees, new hires in. You have to create the systems, the checklists, and Matt already has that all created, so we can hire.
And we have processes that we teach our listeners to find good people. Right. But by default, Andrew, if you were to start working with, let's say, 100 clients this year, How many of them have a daily huddle in place and kicks and carrots and sticks? How many of 100 people, out of 100 new clients, let's say by default, just 100 clients, how many of them will have a daily huddle in place and sticks and carrots?
Yeah, I'd say there's about 5%, 5 out of 100 that've got that figured out so far.
I agree with that. I mean, Matt, do you see, is this a huge problem in the system if you guys weren't enforcing it strictly and teaching about it and preaching about it? I mean, would this be a huge problem for your franchisees if you weren't hammering this concept home?
Sure. And I would say that it still is an issue for our franchise. And I'd say every franchise out there, because at the end of the day, just like you guys are coaching companies to be better at systems and automation, even though we have a lot of that in place, it still takes you getting in front of your employees, having a conversation, holding them accountable, right? And so you have to be diligent on these little things, because if you slip as an owner, I can guarantee you every other piece of your business will slip in some way. So from the very top, if you're not doing the things necessary to allow your business to move forward and grow, then every piece of it, like if you're not doing it, then how can you expect for your employees to do it? So your employees aren't going to do it. How can you expect for your customers to do it?
True.
Right. And so it does really start from the top. I personally have gone through this, and I would say probably I'm always going through this in some way or another, trying to get better and trying to fill in the gaps. But yeah, I mean, it'll always be a problem with small businesses. And I'd say the vast, vast majority will just kind of float, like you said. And then some of the smaller minority will actually do it in place. And that's why they stick out, right? Really successful companies stick out so much because they're being compared to everybody else.
Have you ever watched the documentary about Coach Bob Hurley?
I have, actually.
I think it was a 30 for 30 special they did on ESPN, I think it was. And it was very interesting because he is an intense man who was the coach at the time of, I believe, St. Anthony's was the school. And the school was it St. Anthony's? Do you remember?
St. Mary's, I think.
St. Mary's. Okay, so it was Bob Hurley Sr., and he's probably the best high school basketball coach in American history, if not one of the best. And ESPN did a documentary on this guy. And he was such a good coach here. I guess it's now closed, but it was St. Anthony in New Jersey, in Jersey City, New Jersey. And he amassed 26 he amassed 26 state championships in 39 years as a coach. 26 in 39. And if you watch that documentary, he let the players know going into the season, look, we are not going to have a problem academically. It's not going to happen. You are not going to be late for practice. It's not going to happen. And if you do have a problem, we as a team will not have a problem because you will not be on our team. And it's amazing how he took some of the most challenged economically kids from the worst homes and situations and led those guys to an unbelievable 26 state championships in 39 years. But if you watch that documentary, Matt, he had a few sticks if you didn't do your job. Bill Belichick is not the most happy looking on the sidelines if people don't do their job. You think about Coach Popovich doesn't look exactly the most excited when players on the Spurs don't do their job. So what advice would you have for the listener out there who owns a business, Matt, who their number one desire is to be liked by all their employees, and therefore they will not put any sticks in place? It's just positive. It's only carrots. It's only positive reinforcement. There's no sticks. There's just carrots. They've been reading a lot of books about motivation, and they've gone to they've been on like a trust fall with their team. They've taken their team to some sort of like trust building camp where you fall backwards and they catch you, and they've been watching videos and practicing kumbaya choir sessions, and they've been really spending a lot of time team building, and they just refuse to put in any sticks. It's only carrots. What's going to happen?
Yeah, you're going to get taken advantage of. You're going to allow your employees to start running your business instead of you really holding them accountable. You're going to be, like Andrew said, you're going to be a prisoner of your own company. Your employees are going to set the standard for what's happening. Right. So every piece of that is the negative. right? I can tell you personally, I've had employees where I've done that, right? I've been beholden to them. I was too afraid to make a decision. And you know what happened? Eventually, they just, they removed themselves from the equation because it got so bad. So just chop it off. Start with someone new. Realize that little hurt in the beginning is going to be so much more beneficial down the road. If somebody is doing more harm than good to your business, don't wait another second. Just replace them.
100%.
Right? Don't try to
100%.
correct bad habits if you can't. Just get someone that gets it, that understands, hold them accountable, and do not let them run your business. You run your own.
Dr. Z one time told me a funny story. He said, Clay, if you were feeding your kids, go out to a nice dinner, and every time that Havana puts down the fork and tries to get herself some, chicken or something from this nice fine restaurant, and some member of your team who's not good at their job reaches over and grabs the food out of her mouth and eats it himself, how many times would you let that happen before you'd fire that guy or kick him out of the meal or what? And he said, what about with your wife? If you go to a fine dinner with your wife, and every time that, your wife sits down, somebody else takes her seat, and it's one of your employees, and he keeps doing it. How often would you let somebody take the food out of your wife's mouth? If every time that you went to write a check, for your mortgage, and a member of your team ripped it up, if every time that you tried to walk into your office, somebody tripped you, if every time you tried to go check on the golden goose, and someone was out there trying to, figuratively, if a goose could lay an egg, if you're out there trying to get another golden egg from the goose, and you see one of your teammates out there chasing it around with a shotgun, how long are you going to let that happen, And I never thought of it in terms of like somebody's either hurting your business or helping it. I never thought about that. But when he made that clear distinction in my mind, it became very clear. And I would just encourage everybody out there, if you have somebody on your team who is repelling business, they are killing your brand. And the brand must come first. The brand must come first. And if you're out there today and you say, you know what, I want to team up with the brand who's been putting the brand first for 10 plus years, in this case 13 years. I want to team up with the brand who has 400 locations. I want to team up with the brand to buy a franchise that has the potential power to create both time and financial freedom for me and my family. I would encourage you to go to oxyfresh.com today. That's OXI Fresh, oxyfresh.com, to learn more about buying an OxyFresh franchise. Or you can go to thrivetimeshow.com. That's thrivetimeshow.com/OxyFresh to request additional information about buying an OxyFresh franchise. And Matt Kline, at last check, how much does it cost to buy an OxyFresh franchise?
Yep. The initial investment to get your territory, equipment, product, and training at our home office in Colorado is $38,900.
Ooh.
Best practice is to have somewhere around $20,000 to $25,000 in operational capital available to you to actually start your business and get it to a cash flow positive state.
Matt, you are in a positive state right now, man. I tell you, you sound like a guy who just finished his Christmas shopping. Am I picking up on the right vibrations?
I did. Talk about the worst environment imaginable.
Where'd you go, buddy? Where'd you go?
I went to Target.
Oh no! You went into the belly of the beast on the day before.
And some stuff for my nieces, and it is just an awful place.
You went in the day before. You went in the day before Christmas in there.
Yep.
I have audio, if I could cue it up, of you going in there. And I just want to make sure, Andrew, I think this is the right file.
That's the right one.
Let me cue it up here. Let me make sure this is the right audio file. This is Matt going into Target on the day of, and we might have to do some editing here because this is Target's intense. It's a tough time of the year. The day before Christmas. Mm-hmm. Let me cue it up here. And again, if I get the wrong audio, I apologize. Let me cue this up here. This is let me get here. Let me see. What aisle was this on, Matt? Was this aisle 7?
Aisle 7, yeah.
What were you buying? What were you?
I was buying Pop-Tarts and gift cards.
Oh, really? Let's see here. This is. Oh, I can see this. There seems to be people fighting over the last-minute specials.
The doorbusters.
Matt, what else were you buying in there? Were you there in the electronics?
Nope. I was buying these little
unicorn egg things from my nieces.
Oh, really?
I think they're probably gonna love them for about 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a pretty
Intense unicorns.
Wow. Okay. Well, Shunda, Matt, I'm
My
glad you
gosh.
made it out alive, my friend. I am so thankful you made it out alive. Matt, Merry Christmas to you and yours, and don't drink too much soy eggnog because they enlarge your nipples.
Okay. Well, I'll take note of that.
We know from
Let my
experience.
family know
Well,
of
I'm
this
just
crisis.
there's a lot of soy eggnog this time of the year. People trying to eat healthy, and I can see where this is a beneficial tip. And so just don't drink too much soy eggnog, in moderation.
Drink some, but just
Certainly
not too
won't. I'm gonna drink some, just not soy. Got
That's
to look
right.
out for the nips.
much. Watch out.
All
for the
right,
nips.
all right, you take care.
Great quote.
All right, Merry Christmas, guys.
See ya. 3, 2, 1, boom.